Hey everybody, I'm going to be doing something new this month, so I want to make sure that I let you know to go down into the description box and look at all the quick links so that way you can skip ahead and skip to all the sections you want to go and you can skip back and forth. I'm going to start off by doing like a brief introduction of what the purpose of this series is. So I'm going to be looking at Between the Buried and Me's White Walls this month. I'm going to try to dissect, semi-analyze, kind of lesson-like structure of my favorite parts or the parts that I feel are most important to the song. I'm going to look at it as if it was tuned in standard, so I'm going to be in E standard, so that way you don't have to worry about tuning up or down or whatever. I believe they tune a step and a half down to C sharp, D flat, however you want to look at it. So we're going to be doing it in E, so it's going to be an E minor kind of thing. If you want the correct root note, you just have to go down a step and a half and you'll have the same chord quality but with a different root note. So let's get started. Okay, so the point of this video series is to look at white walls, but we can't really look at white walls without understanding the song that comes before it, which is Viridian. The entire Colors album is kind of a concept where the whole thing is supposed to be one song. So the song right before is Viridian, so the ending kind of bases itself off of a chord shape that's pretty important to the entire song. We have a chord shape that's like this, which is basically an E minor chord with a 9, so I don't know if you want to think of it as a E minor add 9 or E minor 9, but the 9's right here. Viridian is basically a bass solo that's a tribute to Jocko from Dan. So towards the end we have a pattern that uses this chord shape, and we also have a secondary shape, which is this guy over here, which is kind of a minor add 9 kind of shape too, kind of based off of this guy. We got that going on there. It's kind of a slash chord thing with the E still in the bass, and we have the B up here. So E minor 9. So they alternate between each other and it's kind of like a droning thing. So we end up with a pattern that ends up something like this. This kind of just keeps looping over and over again, and that's kind of the end of Viridian that leads into White Walls. What's also important about looking at this ending section in Viridian, it's this chord shape is important to the entire album. A lot of melodic figures and solos and melodies are built off of this chord shape. So this chord comes out several times in White Walls, whether it's in its melodic form or a harmony kind of thing. So it'll pop up later again in the series. So with that said, we have the ending from Viridian. And behind that we'll have the intro of White Walls that fades into it. So when looking at Viridian, there's two ways we can kind of look at the time signature changes. You could see it as one measure of 4/4 followed by a measure of 7/4, or you can see it more simply as two measures of 4/4 and another measure of 3/4. I kind of like seeing it as a measure of 4/4 and 7/4, so that way you don't have to divide the ending sequence. It feels like the second half of the idea is in 7/4, because if we split it up, then we're kind of starting off with this kind of shape. And that sounds almost like an answer, so I guess if you're going to do the 4/4-3/4 kind of thought process, it's going to be a question and answer kind of thing, where if you do the question and answer, it's going to be like the question is this part, and the answer would be this guy. If we think of it as a 7/4 type of phrase, the whole thing I feel is a complete idea. So we would get this in 7/4. like that's more complete. So let's go into white walls. So as Viridian is ending, we have this chug rhythm in the background, which goes 1, 2, and 4, and 6, 1, 2, and 4, 5, and it's kind of in the background, just kind of building and stuff. So we'll go back to that in a bit. First, I want to kind of describe the alternate Picking Madness melody going on at the very beginning. So we have this alternating 6/4 and 5/4 figure that's going on, and because it's double picked, every note is picked twice, you do want to kind of approach it with a downward pick slanting type of approach. I won't go too much into downward pick slanting, but basically instead of picking like this, you have to kind of arch down to where the pick is downward slanting, so you can, after you do an upstroke, 1, 2, you can go to any string you want. So you have a 1, and 2, and. So at the end of every and, you can switch to whichever string you want. Anyways, I won't go too much into that. So it kind of utilizes this downward picking, slanting, double attack kind of thing, like a cynic vibe. So basically what's being outlined is a E minor chord, because we have a low E, we have the octave, we have a D, which is the flat 7, and we have the 5th, the B. And those are pretty much the only notes that are going on. So the phrase goes like this. That's the first measure of 6/4. And the next measure of 5/4 goes. Now looking at that, I would suggest if you're learning this one, it's pretty much all palm muted, and you do want to get it real even, those 16th notes. Like I said, utilize a downward pick slanting so that way the double strokes can kind of flow naturally and you can kind of switch back and forth between the two. Obviously you can see that the phrase starts with that chug rhythm, and that's the kind of division. That's why I have it as 6/4 and as 5/4. So because it's in 6/4 and 5/4, that leads us to the rhythm section. So let's look at the rhythm part as it is in 6/4 and in 5/4. Okay, so looking at the rhythm part, we have a 6/4 measure and a 5/4 measure. And I'm going to put the numbers up of the notes that we're actually going to be playing with and symbols and the number symbols. So I have it written as, I'm going to turn the volume down so you can actually hear my voice. It's going to be 1, 2, and 4, and 6, 1, 2, and 4, 5, and. Now the reason we're using 6/4 and 5/4 is because, as we saw in the main melody, that's the time signatures that they're in. So that's why I introduced the melody section first. And this kind of pretty much goes throughout the whole thing until you get to the very last section, which is all in 6/4. So you have 1, 2, and 4, 5, and 6, and pretty much that's pretty much the entire rhythm section. 1, 2, and 4, and 6, 1, 2, and 4, 5, and. So let's go back to the melody section. Okay, so taking a look back at the main melody kind of section, we can kind of look to see where the open palm muted low E strings are, to kind of see where that is in reference to the rhythm track. So when we're looking at both of them at the same time, we have that 1-2 emphasis from the rhythm track. So also in the melody we have 1E and 2E and so the 1 and 2 are really emphasized on there. In the rhythm track we also have and 4. So when we look at the melody, on 4 is when we have the low E chugs. So we have 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E kind of emphasis, but the end really isn't. At the end of the main melody, we have that kind of constant 16th note kind of thing, but the last phrase kind of changes, so we end up with which leads us into the next part of White Walls, which will be on our next one. Alright, so that's it for our first look into White Walls. We kind of covered the bleed-in from Viridian and the intro section of White Walls. So in the next section we're going to go into this main riff kind of thing, which is my favorite riff on the whole album, so please stay tuned for that one. So you're going to want to subscribe to my channel so that way you can check out that next one, which will hopefully be up next week. I'm going to go see BT Bam in Dallas this upcoming week, so pretty stoked. Please make sure you check out my Facebook and Instagram profiles too, so you can see me mess up on stuff during the week. And if you like beer, check me out on Untappd. I'm not drinking anything right now because I wanted to try to keep this episode short. So I'll see you next time.